This video is intended for people either struggling to beat Eclipse or who want to start it. It assumes you can beat Monsoon with relative consistency and have a decent understanding of the game's mechanics. But even if you aren't ready to face Eclipse yet, I hope you can learn something to help you along the way. First, we'll cover the Eclipse modifiers, what they do, and then go over some misconceptions. We'll also cover a general movement guide, enemy priority, looting, time per stage, and finally some general miscellaneous topics. There are timestamps in the description, and it's important to remember that everything here is based on my opinion, and if you find success with other strategies, that is perfectly valid. Part 1. The modifiers. Eclipse 1 makes you start each level at half health. It is mostly negligible, and you'll forget it's even there after a few runs. Eclipse 2 halves the size of the teleporter radius. This affects later stages and looping more than earlier stages. It is mostly ignorable until Eclipse 7. It also affects pillars, making soul pillars very difficult due to the exploder's death flames covering most of the area, whereas before you would have space to avoid it. It also affects solvents and compounds on top of focus convergence. Eclipse 3 is identical to the Frailty artifact. It doubles full damage and makes it lethal. Full damage usually can only bring you to 1 HP and takes into account one-shot protection. As in E3, it does not care about one-shot protection and can kill you from full health. Eclipse 4 makes enemies move 40% faster, most noticeable on already fast enemies such as rats and Mithrax. This makes Chrono Bauble particularly useful for the Mithrax fight, bringing him back down to a controllable speed. Eclipse 5 halves healing. Here's how long it takes one bungus to recover the sentry to full health in E4 compared to E5. This makes recovering from hits much harder, and it's the first fall a lot of people come to. It punishes being hit a lot more than previous difficulties. Eclipse 6 makes enemies drop 20% less money. This does not affect other sources of income such as Ghost Tome, Pennies, and Brittle Crown. It's the most boring modifier in my opinion, and in the climb it just kind of feels like Eclipse 5 again. Eclipse 7 halves enemy attack cooldowns, meaning they can attack up to twice as much. In Eclipse 6, this golem takes a while to charge his beam again, but in Eclipse 7 he shoots a lot more frequently. His clap attack is not affected by Eclipse 7 because it is limited by his attack speed. Here are 4 golems attacking, although we'll say 3 because 2 attack at the same time. You can see in Eclipse 6 there is downtime between the lasers. On Eclipse 7 however, there is no downtime between the lasers, so I have to keep moving at all times. This really tests your dodging skill. Eclipse 8 reduces your max HP upon taking damage. This includes fall damage, blood shrines and void cradles, and self damage. E8 Curse can remove one-shot protection and resets every stage. The less damage you take, the less curse you take. As you can see here, the Titan gives curse with his laser, but one repulsion armor stops the laser from giving curse because it does not do enough damage. We can get a similar effect with Rose Buckler. Opal also halves the curse we get from this golem from 12 to 6. But the best way to reduce curse is to not get hit, which makes movement speed the best defensive tool. Or get safer spaces, that works too. Next up are some common misconceptions. Misconception 1. Enemy scaling. Enemies scale at the same rate as Monsoon, so if you can kill it in Monsoon, you can kill it in Eclipse. You don't need to rush earlier stages to make up for the scaling, because it is identical to Monsoon. Misconception 2. You cannot loop. Looping is certainly harder in Eclipse than in Monsoon due to a reduced teleporter radius, but it is doable, and if you survive, it will make the Mithrix fight trivial. Misconception 3. It's bullshit. It's actually very well balanced. It doesn't make enemies tankier, it doesn't make you do less damage or take more damage, it simply punishes you for bad plays. To add to this, it only throws one modifier at you at a time, meaning you only have to face a new challenge once you are used to the previous one. I personally found it to be a very satisfying progression. Movement and kiting. In this clip you can see I kill all the wisps because they are the hardest to dodge, but everything can't hit me as I simply run around the edge of the teleporter, jump. I don't even sprint. This movement is your bread and butter and can be greatly expanded upon. Do this while you kill dangerous enemies, do this over large areas, do it while you make a dinner, just make sure you're moving so you don't get hit. Also, don't go back on yourself, this is what happens when you do. Next up, enemy priority. Some enemies are much harder to dodge than others, especially in groups. These enemies are my personal picks for the most dangerous, and I believe the rest can be dodged with decent movement. Beetle Guard, their Sunder ability can be very tricky to dodge, and with Eclipse 4 they are extremely fast. Templars, their long-range high-accuracy minigun can do high damage and give a lot of curse very quickly. Elder Lemurians are very fast in Eclipse and can easily one-shot you if they catch you. Wisps. On early stages, a swarm of wisps can quickly overwhelm you and give a lot of curse and kill you. Thankfully, they don't have much health. Void Jailers. Their stun lock is terrifying and can very quickly get you killed. On the moon, lunar wisps are potentially more deadly than Mithrix, effectively being a flying Templar. If you don't have decent mobility, make sure to kill rats in lava too, but with decent mobility they can simply be ignored. Also make sure to kill beetle queens as quickly as possible. The sheer amount of beetle guards they can spawn on Eclipse 7 is ludicrous. All other enemies can be reliably dodged, but as you play it more you'll learn what you personally need to focus. I just want to note, be careful near Templars as they have this attack that can send you off ledges and down to your death. Also, alloyed worship unit's shielding is ridiculous in the 8, making him very dangerous and tedious to fight, and he often isn't worth it without good damage. The next section is about loot. What loot should you look for, and how much should you get? Generally, full looting is far more consistent than rushing TP. More items means more good items and more synergies, and if you see a print you like, you can put more things into it. Experiment with different methods of looting and see what works for you. I personally hit the teleporter a little before I full looted, but sometimes I do miss items I could have gotten with a bit more patience. Some items shine a bit brighter in Eclipse than in Monsoon, such as safer spaces, repulsion armor, and a rose buckler, as we mentioned before. Personal shield generator, aka PSG, gives a larger health pool, meaning a bit less curse, and the regen of the shields isn't affected by E5. If you're good enough at dodging, you should be able to get it back reliably, and since we don't have one-shot protection most of the time due to E8, we don't need to worry about it affecting that. Slug is the best healing in Eclipse. Dodging lets you regen between bigger fights while you fight the fodder enemy. Weather is amazing, allowing for far better dodges and giving everyone a reliable full damage cancel. Obviously, things like Ukulele and ATG and most other damage items are just as good as before. Some items are considerably worse. Rejuvenation Rack is undesirable as you should now be skilled enough to not rely on the healing. Nuka Harness now needs twice as much healing to be as effective. Aegis doesn't work. Scythe is mostly seen as a 5% crit increase. Lepton and Leech Seed are even worse than before. How much time should you spend looting per stage? Generally speaking, I take 8 to 12 minutes on stage 1. I usually enter stage 3 at 20 to 25 minutes, and I'm usually at stage 5 by 45 minutes. Good printers can make these times go up, but I don't often look at the clock until I'm leaving already anyway. The timer is mostly ignorable. The biggest thing is to minimize time wasted not getting items. The last part is a few miscellaneous topics. It is worth getting the bans on aqueducts, even if it takes you 5 minutes to successfully roll pods under the buttons. I'll link a pot rolling guide in the description. Pillar skipping. Doing pillars before fighting mythrates can make you fight mythrates at a big disadvantage. The elite wisps can kill you very fast, and even if you do survive, you may be fighting mythrates with half of your max HP. I'll link a video about pillar skipping in the description if you're interested. Lunar items and Transcendence. The item Transcendence negates half the eclipse modifiers. E1, E3 and E5 are all ignored with this item, and you will receive less curse because of the higher health pool. Whether you take it to win with the items in the game, or avoid it to challenge yourself, is up to you, but generally I'd say stay away from using lunar items as it can ruin the variety of the game if you have the tonic and gesture everywhere. I hope this helps, likes are appreciated, and questions are welcome. Also check me out on Twitch, link in the description. Have a good day.